Good morning, Baltimore. It is Monday, July 27th, and thank you for tuning in to the latest episode of the Early Birds podcast. I'm your host, Matt Weyrich, alongside columnist Josh Tolentino. Josh, football season has arrived, kind of. Ravens training camp kicks off this week on Wednesday. You and Sam are going to be out there for the next 7 weeks, really, leading up to the season opener. It is the time of optimism. It is the time to wonder if all of the moves that the Ravens made in the offseason were enough. How are you feeling with this marathon about to get started?
Man, it's not necessarily like that feeling of the night before Christmas, but it's certainly something similar, Matt, just looking forward to the next few weeks and so many questions entering this pivotal Ravens training camp. This is not a team, the traditional team in the sense of moving on from their coach and starting a rebuild. No, this is a team that is expected to compete for the Super Bowl in the first year of Jesse Minter's coaching career as he embarks here in Baltimore. Man, we're going to take it all in. And man, the best part about these training camp practices is that the NFL mandates them to be completely open and available to the media. So from start to finish, practices run about 2 hours. You know, John Harbaugh, on some instances would push them to 2.5. So we'll see the exact structure of Jesse Minter's practices with everyone, and I say that with an asterisk, but everyone back in town, and everyone who's healthy enough on the roster to compete here for over these next few weeks leading to the start of the season. Their first Week 1 opener. Again, Jesse Minter's coaching career begins at Week 1 at Indianapolis. So let's get the show on the road.
Yeah, man, we started this podcast back in February, which was obviously during the Ravens offseason. So it's felt like from the Ravens side on the show that we've just been fighting for every scrap of news we can and getting glimpses of the team through OTAs and rookie minicamp and mandatory minicamp and all these things. And finally, these guys are going to put the pads on. We're going to start to see what this team is going to look like here in 2026. It's not real games yet, but it's the best thing that we have had here since the start of this show. So I'm super excited to be following along here and obviously looking forward to seeing all the coverage you guys and Brian Wacker, Mike Preston all have for the Sun out at training camp. It is an exciting time with a lot of change going with this team, an aggressive offseason, one where they make one of the biggest moves of the winter, or the summer, I should say. Sorry, I got to switch my frame of mind here from baseball to football. But one of the biggest moves of the summer to get Trey Hendrickson. They obviously changed coaches, drafting a guard at a really position of need in the first round. So some big moves. And we're going to go ahead and preview training camp here, take a look at some of the biggest storylines across the training camp for the Ravens, and also look at some position battles, players to watch with injury, things like that, and just kind of try and get as all-encompassing a preview as we can of training camp here. So let's start with the schedule, Josh. Kicks off Wednesday. Already, all of the open training camp practices to fans have been sold out. There is a wait list on the Ravens website, but clearly you're going to have to jump on that if you're trying to attend it as a fan. Open practices run through August 17th. The Ravens will begin camp with a 90-man roster that they have to cut down to 53 in Week 1. They used to have cut-down dates that they were trimming throughout camp. Now it's just one bulk cut-down number at the end of camp, so they'll be able to have that full 90 here all the way through the next 7 weeks. They'll play 3 preseason games against Philly, the Vikings, and the Commanders, and including joint practices against the Vikings on August 19th and 20th, and the Commanders August 26th. And then after that last preseason game, against the Commanders, they'll have a dead week before shifting into game week mode there ahead of their opener against the Colts on September 13th. So over the next 7 weeks, it's going to be a busy time. We're going to get a real understanding of who are going to be some of the major players on the bubble, guys who are going to play significant roles, and what this new system looks like under Jesse Minter and his new coaching staff.
Yeah, and it's a super long runway this next month and a half leading up to the start of the NFL's regular season. Again, a long runway. They practice for about a month. You play 3 preseason games with Lamar Jackson and the other starters really not expected to participate, but there's that dynamic of a new coaching staff, and how much does that play a role? Honestly, man, I'm just excited for the football, for one, to be back here in Owings Mills, but the joint practices, especially that you mentioned, those last two games against the Minnesota Vikings. The Ravens will be traveling to Minnesota a little early, having two joint practices against the Vikings. That's the real treat, and Brian Wacker will be there for the Sun, and that's when you get the starter reps against another team. Up until the point of the games, you're really not getting that high level intensity, especially when it comes to the starters. Lamar Jackson, tons of work to do in this as he takes on a new coordinator here with Declan Doyle, but really you don't get to see what he and his offensive teammates look like against opposition at a high level until we get to those joint practices, and then they also conclude the end of training camp with one against the Washington Commanders. I really hope that one happens, because last year, Matt, they did have one scheduled also against the Commanders. That one was supposed to be up in Ashburn, but you look at the schedule from the end of last preseason, and the Commanders, they actually were coming off a short week entering that practice. They end up canceling. The Ravens, end up rescheduling and having their own practice. So, man, you really hope that doesn't happen in this case. And actually, it'll be the Ravens this time. I believe they'll be the ones on the short week going into that game. I believe that Saturday is the Vikings game, and going into the following week, the last week of the preseason, they play the Commanders on a Friday, expected to have that practice on Wednesday. So hoping that continues to hold true. But again, man, just the emotions right now is someone who gets to enjoy it and just really, again, learn what Jesse Minter's full practices look like as training camp here in Barks.
Yeah, and as many teams do, they'll be kind of simulating game weeks throughout the preseason there, not practicing on Sundays leading up to it, and then trying to play kind of what they would do to prepare for teams there, getting the simulation down, especially for the rookies who have already reported. The veterans will report. Their mandatory report date is tomorrow, Tuesday. That would be July 28th. So they'll all be in the building, though, Josh, as Josh was mentioning to me before the show, a lot of them already in town and around the facility and things like that. So it does seem like a lot of that is already underway. So it's happening. People are in the building. There's going to be football that is being played on a near everyday basis here. And, the road to a potential Super Bowl appearance for this Ravens team is officially underway. So super exciting there. As we go through these storylines, we wanted to bring back the chirp meter. It's one of our favorite segments here. As those who are uninitiated and have not been here through it before, we assign a number 1 through 5 on the chirp meter of how much fans should be paying attention to this particular storyline during camp. Where 1, it will be don't overreact. 2 is worth mentioning. 3, pretty important. 4 is a major storyline. And 5 is a camp-defining storyline, something that absolutely everybody should be following, whether you're a Ravens fan or really a National Football League fan in general, just as you look at what this Ravens team can do and its impact across the league. So 1 through 5, 5 being the most intense, 1 being the most tepid. We'll kind of each give our scores as we go throughout all of these storylines. And starting with number 1, clearly one of the biggest storylines here is Lamar Jackson. Entering year 9, he's got a new system, not the first time he's had a new offensive coordinator, but certainly the first time that he has a new head coach overseeing the entire franchise, and searching for his first Super Bowl, as we all know, still the very much elusive championship for Lamar Jackson this era, being maybe the one thing he is missing from his mantle, and also looking for a bounce-back season after being limited to injury last year, not just cutting down the number of games he played, but clearly impacting his mobility on the field as well. Josh, where are you at on the chirp meter with Lamar entering year 9?
Oh gosh, I entered entering year 9. Lamar Jackson. He says he's not an unk yet. Man, going into this exercise, I had it at a 3, but I'm gonna raise the urgency a little bit as a 4. And man, I really don't want to bounce back to a 3, because the reason why the initial thought was a 3 is that Lamar is going to figure this out. Declan Doyle is, because you look at his first seasons with Greg Roman, their former offensive coordinator, with Todd Monken, now the head coach over there with the Cleveland Browns. MVP season. So is a third MVP season loading for Lamar Jackson under Declan Doyle's offense? Well, the big word has been explosives for this coaching staff. And again, there is concern, and that's why why my heightened concern from a 3 to a 4 on our chirp meter, and that's because of all the adversity and injuries Lamar Jackson went through last season, coming off one of the most historic offensive seasons in franchise history 2 seasons ago. So just a quick rundown again of Lamar's adversity and everything that he faced last season. He missed 4 games, 3 with hamstring injuries, 1 late in the season with a back injury, a career low in rushing yards, creating a lot of man, it feels like every time you load up a national talk show host, a national sports show, that whenever Lamar Jackson is a subject, is when is his career going to transition at this point as it pertains to his levels as a dual threat, and can he maintain that high level that we've seen him play at for so many seasons? And again, his first losing season as a starter, 6-7 the Ravens were in games started by Lamar Jackson. The list goes on, but those were really the main lowlights from Lamar Jackson's season, and that's why I'm at a 4. But as history has shown, and I wrote this recently in a column as it pertains on Lamar Jackson, man, his NFL peers are writing him off. He was ranked number 69 in the NFL's top 100 players list. The last 2 times that happened coincided with those seasons under Greg Roman's offense and Todd Monken's offense. Those former first-time coordinators, and now he gets Declan Doyle. Can he make it a three-peat?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly believe that Lamar Jackson is very capable of returning to the heights that he had. Obviously, you mentioned having the first losing season of his career, 7 of his career 31 losses coming last season. So not a guy who is used to being on that end of things. And obviously the rushing impact that he was not able to make last year because of the injuries he had was clear down the stretch, just wasn't as explosive on the ground. And I think you could chalk that up to injury. And, he's still very much in the prime of his career. You still very much expect him to be as explosive a rusher as he has been at any point throughout his career. But I think 69, way too low for Lamar Jackson. He is a top 3 quarterback, and I don't think it's particularly close in terms of the tier gap between the 3 of them and everybody else.
Yeah, exactly. He belongs certainly much higher, in my opinion, and I feel like a lot of his teammates have similar sentiments. And before we move, last thing, Matt, before we move on to our next segment in this chirp meter as it pertains to Lamar, the most encouraging part is that he seems bought in, and there have been attempts from Jesse Minter's coaching staff, reports of him traveling down to visit Lamar Jackson during the offseason, and Lamar returning the favor by being by everyone's accounts who's followed Lamar Jackson and this team closely over the past decade. This is about been the most bought in he's been in terms of his participation in off-season workouts and team activities. Got to be encouraging to see Lamar Jackson here. Again, one of the guys who've showed up early before Tuesday's mandatory report date. And again, this tracks early in the offseason, him just being an active participant from everything that we've seen as it pertains to his involvement in learning new terminology and new offense under Declan Doyle.
Yeah, and not that Lamar has anything to prove, but this is basically a contract year for him as he looks to sign. Obviously did not reach an extension this offseason, as we've talked about here on this program, but does not appear likely that he will be signing an extension here in camp. There's certainly a potential for that, but with 2 years left on his deal, they restructure his contract this offseason, no extension included there. They free up some cap space, and now as they go into next season, they will certainly have to restructure again, but you would think that at that point it's when they start to really talk about seriously working out some kind of long-term deal. So he's obviously going to want to be coming off of a great season. So imperative for him to have the year that he expects to, and also have the health that he expects to as well, as that has been something that has impacted multiple seasons with Lamar Jackson. Maybe his records, win-loss records, are stellar just when he starts, but they've also had a lot of games over the years that he hasn't been able to start, and they've had to turn to other backups, and it's been a bit of a mixed bag there. So certainly with Lamar, it's a huge season for him to stay on the field and show that he is still Lamar Jackson in every sense of the word.
Yep, you said everything right there, Matt. And on his cap number for next season, $84 million, just an unrealistic number. Both sides are going to come back to the table, and my bet it would be after the end of the season. Again, Lamar Jackson with plenty to prove to himself and to this organization that again that they can make another long-term commitment between the two parties, and ultimately we'll be waiting on the day that he again becomes likely one of the highest paid players in NFL history.
All right, moving right along. We got some injuries that are important for fans to know heading into camp here. They placed several players, count them six, on the PUP list going into camp, headlined by defensive tackle Nnamdi Madubuike, which we've talked about all offseason. His status for week one very much up in the air with a neck injury. Defensive tackles Travis Jones and John Jenkins are on the PUP list as well. Jones dealing with a pec injury. We'll see how serious that is going into the start of camp, something that we expect to see him on the field. I believe he did play a mandatory minicamp, if I'm not mistaken, Josh, so certainly not something that is lingering for too long here. Jenkins is an undisclosed situation there, so we'll find out more. Teddy Buchanan coming off of a knee injury. He is the other kind of, along with Madubuike, whose status for week one is maybe the most in doubt. Does seem like the Eric DeCosta and front office guys are pretty optimistic about his recovery and the way things have gone, but certainly something that bears watching there. Outside linebacker, Adisa Isaac dealing with a dislocated elbow, and cornerback Bilal Kone coming off of a knee injury that sacrificed his entire season last year. So those six guys all on the PUP list. They can be activated from that list at any time. And then Corey Bullock, offensive lineman, who we've talked a lot about in contention for the starting center job up until they signed Ethan Pocic. He's dealing with an undisclosed injury as well, but was placed on the NFI list, the non-football injury list. So a bit more of an interesting situation there as we learn more over the next few days of what all these guys are dealing with. Josh, when you look at this list, I mean, obviously Madubuike I think is a 5 for both of us, but on the chirp meter, where are you at with kind of these injuries from top to bottom?
Man, you said count them up. 6 players on the PUP list. Count up my chirps. Chirp, 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 chirp. That's a 5 for me, and I'll just group them all together. And I say my level of concern is high, Matt, because first, look back at Jesse Minter's comments from mandatory minicamp, and he said his words that he expected everyone to be ready to participate once training camp arrives. That does not look like it's going to be the case. And then you look at the 6 names on the list. Matt, 3 of them are guys who they've given extension to in recent years, and those same 3 are all interior defensive linemen, with Nnamdi Madubuike, Travis Jones, and just to recap his involvement at mandatory minicamp, he was a participant in terms of showing up. Not much action on the field for him, and at one point during at least one practice, I remember he wasn't even on the field, but then he emerged from the weight room. The facility in Owings Mills, just for our viewers to give some perspective, is they have these full ceiling to wall glass windows from their weight room. So, once you're working out, and specifically the Ravens built the facility like this in the renovations from last season, so that rehabbing guys, and Travis Jones was part of that rehab group, is that while they're rehabbing, they're able to see the guys on the field, almost like a sense of motivation for them to want to return. And at the conclusion, at that one practice that I'm referencing, Travis Jones, these windows, they actually slide, like the ceiling to floor glass windows, they slide a bit. So Travis Jones, he slid the window and made he peeked his head out in a sense. And the reception of all his teammates, seeing that he was there supporting him from afar, was great to see, and also for him to be there in the building. Some other players going through injuries across the league are not taking those same routes in terms of their involvements and being at the facility. But just getting back to the chirp meter and my level of concern, how much I'm paying attention to with this PUP list, it is at a 5 because it involves those 3 defensive linemen. And man, you think about the lack of sacks last year. You can look at that in so many ways, but when the interior is not collapsing the pocket, there's no way that they're going to work in sync with the edges, and there's no way that the front between the outside and the inside guys are going to work with the back end when guys are not getting home and affecting the pocket. So you hope those three guys can get healthy, and especially in Nnamdi Madubuike's case, that's been the biggest one to circle here. There have been many encouraging signs, and it seems like the prognosis for his return to play is good. It wouldn't have gone, in my opinion, that it wouldn't have gone this far if it was going to trend in the opposite direction for Nnamdi Madubuike, and that opposite direction being retirement. So the fact that he is going to be here, that he has been in the building, a very encouraging sign for this team. But you got to get them all back on the field as it pertains to those three defensive linemen.
Yeah, I mean, without Madubuike, lined up for week one, it certainly is going to give opportunities, maybe some other guys, to see what they look like in camp. And obviously with Calais Campbell's situation involving the death of his mother, we're not really sure where everything stands with him right now. So that will bear worth watching as well as they get into camp. But certainly this defensive line, it has so much potential to be a true strength of this team. And right now, we just have a lot of question marks about who's even going to be on the field. And Buchanan, a significant loss for this group too, was second on the team in tackles when he went down with a torn ACL in his right knee in week 15. So obviously being so late in the season and trying to make a turnaround, that we've heard lots of positive things about his recovery so far, but his actual timeline for getting on the field in week one is very much still up in the air. So we'll see if that's something that is all just kind of talk, or if they actually do feel like he is going to be ready by the season opener.
And we'd be remiss, Matt, we're talking about how much this impacts the top end of the depth chart. Well, this provides opportunity for the guys at the bottom of the depth chart. And one guy, in my opinion, who flashed throughout off-season workouts was Aeneas Peebles. He was a sixth-round pick in last year's draft, finished last season with just 2 tackles, so very minimal contributions. But he flashed on occasions going against the offensive line that was put together during the off-season workouts. And then another opportunity for Rayshawn Benny. He is a 7th-round, day 3 pick out of Michigan. He has experience working with Jesse Minter at their alma mater there at the University of Michigan. So there's a connection there with Minter. So let's see what Rayshawn Benny and Aeneas Peebles can bring again as Travis Jones, John Jenkins, and Nnamdi Madubuike begin training camp on the PUP list.
Yeah, and while we are going through roster moves here, we should also mention the Ravens made a couple of moves here over the last few days, signing wide receiver Chris Moore. We had a whole episode talking about veteran wide receivers they could sign. They go for more of a lower ceiling option in Moore, who was with the Commanders last season, and also signing offensive lineman, making sure I pronounce this right, Hakeem Adeniji. A veteran offensive lineman who's played for several different teams, 3 in the last 3 years, 55 career games, 16 career starts. So seeing time at tackle and guard, a depth signing for the Ravens on the offensive side. Also releasing quarterback Diego Pavia, who we obviously talked a lot about during rookie camp, coming out of Vanderbilt and all of that. So Joe Fagnano now is there, maybe as one of the leading candidates, along with Skylar Thompson, to be that QB3 for this team. Also waiving guard Jared Penning and punter Luke Elzinga. So a couple of moves there heading into camp to get that roster to the 90 necessary for camp. But obviously, with all of these injuries that they are dealing with, we'll see what that 53-man roster looks like here over the next 7 weeks. All right, let's look at our second storyline here, Josh, unless anything else you had on any of those moves or injuries.
No, let's move right along. The
Cool.
agenda here is a bit long.
Yes, absolutely. Storyline number 2 that we have on our list here. How big will the growing pains be for Jesse Minter and his staff in year 1 of the post-Harbaugh era? Obviously, this is a fairly inexperienced staff. They have Jesse Minter coming in, being a first-time head coach. You have Declan Doyle, who obviously is going to be a first-time play caller. There is, a lot of pressure here with Harbaugh and everything else. There was maybe a feeling of they needed a fresh start. They needed a clean slate with maybe some younger guys like this. But for the Ravens, they really went all in on guys who they felt like could be, particularly in the sense of Jesse Minter, their coach for the next 10 years. As opposed to trying to, go the Steelers route and bringing in a Mike McCarthy, someone who is a bit more of a known commodity, might not have as long of a runway as your head coach, but certainly in terms of trying to win now, you can see how he could step in and maybe things be seamless right away. There is going to be, as we've seen with Baltimore with the Orioles, it's not always a guarantee that a first-year head coach is able to step in and make sure that they kind of stabilize the ship and get back to their winning ways right away. This is a Ravens team that needs to prove that last year was a fluke, and they're going to be doing so with a staff that is going to have to prove that it is capable of being a staff at the NFL level.
Yeah, my chirp level is at a 4 here as it pertains to Jesse Minter and what the growing pains will look like, and ultimately how he's going to reset this defense and get back to their, when you think of the Ravens, and I've learned this so much in my interactions with fans and, even other reporters, Sam Cohn, our co-host, but when you think of the Ravens, and it's brought up in just general NFL conversation, you think of Lamar Jackson and you think of very good defense for many, many years. Well, last year was the complete opposite of a very good defense, and in a similar way, they had lofty expectations to compete for a Super Bowl, and certainly did we see the defense make some strides and improvements over the course of the year? Yes, particularly as it pertains to containing the run. But when it came to defending the pass, the Ravens had so many lapses. And so as it pertains to Jesse Minter's defense and what practices are going to look like, I think everyone is going to notice the cosmetic stuff as it pertains to the schedule. Everyone's going to track how long practices are. A big thing with Jesse Minter over these past couple months when he's been having his off-season workouts is at the end he does a be at your best when your best is needed drill. All that is great, and we're going to keep track of all of those things. But I'm particularly most interested in, does this defense, can he make all 11 guys look connected? He needs 11 guys playing on the same call way too often last year. You saw one guy doing another thing. Guys within the position, the same position groups doing other things in terms of not playing in sync football, all 11 guys attacking the ball and fulfilling their responsibilities. So again, that's probably the most thing that I'm most interested in, is how sharp and well connected does this defense look like under Jesse Minter?
Yeah, I mean, obviously he stepped into the Chargers and was really able to help take that defense to another level, being one of the best defenses in football last year, and really with kind of a largely aging roster top to bottom there, having Khalil Mack as one of your top edge rushers at his stage of his career and being able to make the most of that team, I think says a lot about the what he was able to do and get the most out of guys. Obviously, they certainly have some big names on that defense as well, but certainly with the Ravens now, this is a defense that has, in recent memory, been one of the better defenses in football, and now it's about getting that group back to being what it's capable of, and ensuring guys like Marlon Humphrey and Roquan Smith and Calais Campbell and who have you don't start to really hit the aging curve too harshly, and that come back to be a problem at multiple levels of this defense. So he's got his work cut out for him on the defensive side. Obviously, having some experience there in Anthony Weaver, to be able to rely on him as the DC under him, but he's going to be a defensive play caller as a head coach. So at the end of the day, this is going to fall on Minter, the entire play of that defensive side. And on the offensive side, it's Declan Doyle, who being revered as a genius, and certainly showing up with a lot of new ideas and things like that guys in this Ravens locker room have never seen before. But at the end of the day, you got to be able to implement it and have a game plan and go out and execute it and be able to adjust on the fly as things happen in games and things like that. You can have the schematic mind all you want, but your ability to call plays in a game is certainly something that is a beast of its own. So we'll see kind of how this all looks in camp, and maybe that's not something that we figure out here until week one, but certainly the buy-in from guys and how much there's guys running into each other or drops or the plays that you're observing, are there easy interceptions, things like that. Like those are how we're going to be able to read maybe how this offense and how this defense on the other end looks here in training camp, and just what those growing pains might look like for this first year staff.
There's going to be good days for the offense. There's going to be good days for the defense. There's going to be those 50 days where it's a toss-up on who wins that day. I'm most particular. Who cares who wins the day? Are these 11 guys that are on the field playing as a unit? And as we've seen, and we'll get into here as we switch over to position battles, that Jesse Minter, you look at his track record and his usage of his defensive players, particularly defensive backs. I think there's going to be some a lot of learning from this defensive back room, no matter who you are. Marlon Humphrey, it's time to go back to school. And I point him out specifically because he's the veteran of the group, and he probably has expectations on how he goes about his business. I think Jesse Minter is going to introduce some new wrinkles as it pertains to his usage with defensive backs to keep some guys fresh. But let's dive right into our next segment of roster battles, and we're going to start with the big one, starting center. And we've discussed this a bit over the past couple episodes, but replacing Tyler Linderbaum is no easy task. And Tyler Linderbaum, he goes on to be the highest paid center in NFL history, joining the Las Vegas Raiders in free agency, and now the Ravens are moving forward. So what is your concern level? What is your chirp meter here as it pertains to starting center at roster battle?
Yeah, our chart meters so far have been identical. And that's why I haven't even bothered giving mine so far. I've just been in step with you on each of those three to this point. But here for the starting center, I'm down probably, do I want to say a 1? Because Ethan Pocic, I feel like, has the inside track here to be the starting center. And while they could say they are still leaving open the possibility of a competition here, I think the fact that they signed a guy coming off an Achilles injury who obviously checked off some boxes and shows that he's ready to go and ready to play in camp. But the fact that they so late in the offseason signed a center tells me that they weren't satisfied with the group they had. So I think Pocic has the inside track to being a center. So not that maybe fans shouldn't pay attention to it, but I think we are going to be seeing Pocic at that center spot all of camp with the first team. And the more comfortable that he gets with Lamar Jackson, the more likely I think that he is going to be in that spot on week 1.
Yeah, I'm at a 2, Matt, and this because Pocic joined the team recently, and just assessing the position in the depth chart, man, you got to feel for Corey Bullock, and we don't know exactly what injury he is going through, placed on the non-football injury list. So again, happened away from the facilities, non-football activities as it pertains to his injury. This would have been the perfect time for him to step in, and we heard so many good things about his play last year as being a good practice player. Could he transition it to games? It doesn't look like, at least early on, that he's going to get that opportunity to compete for the job. And again, that's why I'm at a 2. Ethan Pocic, almost 100 career starts. The Ravens have seen many of them with him playing for a division rival before previously beginning his career with the Seattle Seahawks. So again, I think his experience makes him the favorite. The fact that he arrived this late, as you pointed out, shows how unsettled that position was. So you're at a 1 and I'm at a 2, and we can move on.
Yeah. Outside linebacker opposite Trey Henderson is going to be maybe one of the more important battles here just because it involves a starting spot opposite Trey Hendrickson. The guys in that conversation right now, you have Mike Green, who showed some flashes as a rookie last year. You have Tavius Robinson, be considered the veteran of this group, and Zion Young, their second-round pick of this year's draft, a rookie coming in here. How much do you feel like, Josh, this is a competition? Is it Tavius Robinson's job to lose? And how much, where are you at with your chirp meter? Is this something that fans really need to watch as camp progresses?
Yeah, well, first off, I'm really excited that they addressed the group first in the attempt to get Max Crosby, and then the reroute to the big man Trey Hendrickson, and then in the draft with Zion Young. So you gotta be happy, just given how much this group lacked last season, and again how much talent they added to the room, and they also got younger with adding Zion Young. Man, put me at a 3, just because you feel like there's going to be positive regression here back to the mean for this Ravens defense, for them to be able to get back again to being vaunted. And I think it is Tavius Robinson's job to lose, but again, do not consider me surprised, Matt, if this ends up being some sort of rotation between Tavius Robinson, Mike Green, the second-year player, who, man, he's shown up in shape. Man, you look at, and again, I know they're not in pads and full pads during these practices, but Mike Green, man, it definitely looks like he's put on some muscle. And then Zion Young, he brings the juice. There weren't many of these practices in terms of where there was I'm laughing in my head because I'm bringing up chirping with our chirp meter, on the episode that we do our chirp meter, but there wasn't a lot of chirping between the offense and defense during the offseason workouts and mandatory minicamp. But one moment it did involve Zion Young getting in the face of, I can't remember the offensive lineman, but basically the play had ended, the whistle had blown, and Zion Young was not done getting in the face of the offensive lineman that he basically covered sparked a little brouhaha, whatever you want to call it. So I imagine those moments are going to come to surface a little bit more here throughout training camp. These are long days in the summer heat, and players are going to get ticked off going against their own teammates until they get to hit someone else. So put me at a 3 there, because I think it's going to be a mix of Mike Green, Tavius Robinson, and Zion Young on the opposite side of Trey Hendrickson.
Yeah, I'm at a 3 too, but I do think it is going to be important which guy kind of wins out the starting role here, as they're going to kind of get first crack at being able to cement themselves as the number 2 pass rusher opposite Trey Hendrickson, or edge rusher, I should say, and also in that as the season progresses, all of these guys are going to get rotated in, but if you're able to kind of get that leverage to start and show that you belong, on the field when the downs are most important, at the end of the game, start of the game, whatever you might have. I think that is going to determine really early on, what this kind of snap share looks like. And for the younger guys in Mike Green and Zion Young, it's going to be tougher for them just being where they are in their career to kind of cycle in upwards to get more playing time until they really show it, as opposed to if they were to right off the bat, do that just because, not to say that they're just going to give Tavius Robinson the nod just because he's a veteran, but certainly he has earned with his play on the field a little bit of a benefit of the doubt there, whereas these rookies, these younger guys, are going to have to prove a little bit more that they are up to snuff and deserving of more playing time. And it certainly gets harder if they're working from the bottom of the ladder as opposed to the top.
Speaking of younger guys with stuff to prove, let's move on to number 3 wide receiver. And I'll be very upfront and quick here, Matt, is that I am at a 1 as it pertains to our chirp meter and the number 3 wide receiver. Lamar Jackson, he's just always going to figure out with whatever guys he has, and if that means throwing a bunch Tuesday flowers, then that is how it plays out. But I think there's going to be more distribution here with Declan Doyle being the head of the head chef in that room, so to speak, and just breaking that down rundown of guys who are competing for the number 3 wide receiver spot. You got Devontae Walker, who has a lead-in as the most experienced guy of the group. His ability to make big-time catches, many of his career catches, touchdowns. That famous one that he had Week 18 in Pittsburgh. And then joining Devontae Walker, Jacoby Lane, the rookie, Elijah Surratt, another rookie, LaJohntay Wester, the second-year player, primary returner, and Chris Moore, who you mentioned earlier in the show. Again, I'm at a 1. One of those guys is going to emerge. I guess it's one of the rookies, maybe Devontae Walker, but again, Lamar Jackson, he tends to figure it out with whoever's joining him in the huddle.
Yeah, and I think also, I don't think we're going to see a lot of 3 wide receiver sets under this offense with Declan Doyle. Certainly, coming from the Sean Payton and the Ben Johnson trees, both of which have used 2 tight ends a whole lot throughout their kind of traditional setups. So I would imagine we're going to see a lot of 2 tight end sets for the Ravens here. So that 3rd wide receiver, while it is certainly going to be interesting to follow, and honestly, this might be a competition for a number 2 wide receiver, if we're being honest. Like, Rashad Bateman is kind of the de facto number 2 wide receiver in this group, but I would imagine that if an Elijah Surratt or Jacoby Lane comes out and really impresses in camp, or Tez Walker looks the part, maybe they start to break into some of Rashad Bateman's playing time there. But I'm going to go with a 2 for me on the chirp meter, just because, 1, I do think this is something that, especially when you have a group that has 2 rookies in such key spots, you're going to expect they're going to be a learning curve, and those guys are going to take time to step into their own. I mean, you see it all the time with rookies. First 5-6 weeks of the season, they are kind of still learning the offense and not getting a ton of snaps and things like that, and then they really start to come in their own down the stretch. I think, especially with these guys being day 2 picks and not day 1 picks, we could be seeing something like that with this wide receiver group of going in with kind of the status quo of who they had last year, and maybe as time progresses, we start to see things change a little bit there. I mean, training camp's going to be extremely valuable for these young receivers, for sure, but at the same time, in terms of this roster battle, this competition, 1, I don't think the number 3 wide receiver is going to play as big of a role as it might in other offenses, and 2, it's something that feels more fluid to me than maybe, as we were just talking about with the edge rushing situation. It is the way that this roster is assembled. It very much feels like it could change, week to week, drive to drive.
All right, so low chirps there for us as it pertains to the number 3 wide receiver. Let's move on to our last one here with roster battles, and that's cornerback, and particularly depth there at who's snagging these last few spots. So at the top of the depth chart, we've obviously got Nate Wiggins, Marlon Humphrey, Cheeto Awuzie locked into those top 3 spots. We've seen TJ Tampa flash throughout offseason workouts. He's a 2024 4th-round pick. He played in all 17 games last season, mostly in a special teams role, but he did get some defensive opportunities late in the season, made his first career interception, had 29 tackles. Keon Martin, an former undrafted free agent who signed who made the team out of camp last year. He actually threw out the first pitch for the Orioles. Their only win from this weekend on Saturday. Maybe they have to come out. They got to get Keon Martin out at the ballpark more.
Him and Old Bay. They had an Old Bay mascot also throw out the first pitch right before him. So it's one of the 2. I'm not sure which.
As an aside, when you get invited to throw out the first pitch, what are you thinking there when a mascot is going in front of you?
I know. Like, clearly some sponsored situation going there. Red Hot was also represented as well.
Or maybe it's the better thing that he was the last one to throw the first pitch. They're like, we got to save the best for last.
That's fair.
Yeah, he had the City Connect jersey, so it was great to have him at the yard. And then just assessing the rest of the depth chart and, who's expected to compete for these final spots on the roster with the cornerback. 5th-round draft pick Chandler Rivers, man, speedy guy, ran a 4.4 40 at the combine, had 7 interceptions at Duke. And then you look at a couple of rookies last year who did not get to reach the start of their rookie season, still waiting to make their NFL debuts. In Bilal Kone, torn ACL during exhibition home game last year at Owings Mills. I'm sorry, at the bank. again during a preseason exhibition game, and then Roger Longerbeam, both of them 6th-round picks from last year. How are their rehabs and recoveries going, and will they be able to participate and, more importantly, in their case, compete for one of these last few spots? Man, I think I got to lean with the fresh face here, Chandler Rivers, just because the newness, and, he was a a day 2 pick when it comes to this Ravens and assessing this position. And then TJ Tampa, important year for him. Another day 2 pick from a couple seasons ago. We've seen him flash. He's got good measurables. And again, I think Jesse Minter, the Jesse Minter effect to all of this will be telling as it pertains to the defensive back room and really how they play well together. I think there's going to be a good mix of them throughout training camp and going into the regular season.
Yeah, a lot of unknowns in that group between Chandler Rivers being the rookie and Kone and Roger Longerbeam coming off of season-ending injuries that occurred before the season even began. So basically, they'll be rookies as well, competing against Rivers, both those guys being 6th-round picks and Rivers being the 5th-round pick of this year's draft. So some youngsters in there, a UDFA from last year as well in Keon Martin. So guys that, if any of them turn out to be important contributors of this team, and obviously we will definitely be seeing whoever it is on special teams a good bit. But if any of them end up being contributors on this team, certainly an organizational win for the Ravens from a player development standpoint.
Yeah, and just looking at, again, I referenced this earlier with Jesse Minter and his usage of defensive backs. So last year, when it comes to the Ravens and how their defensive backs were deployed, Nate Wiggins, he led the group with 1,029 snaps. That was 90%. Marlon Humphrey, 880 snaps. That was 78% of snaps. And then Cheeto Awuzie, 557 snaps. So those were the 3 main guys. And then TJ Tampa and Keon Martin, they got some time, but both finished with less than 150 snaps each. Look at the Chargers defense, Matt. They're basically Jesse Minter. He rotated 5 guys with significant playing time. So you look at the Ravens; they had their 3 guys in Cheeto and Nate and Marlon. Under Jesse Minter and the Chargers, he had 5 guys that he regularly deployed, and he didn't let ego get in the way. And in my discussions with folks around the Chargers, both in the facility and on that beat, that was Jesse Minter's one of his best qualities, was being able to enforce his message to the room and deploy his system on the field, is getting guys to buy in that, we're not necessarily going to have a 1A and a 1B. You guys are all going to get these opportunities throughout the course of the season. There were instances where guys would have stellar games and stellar performances, and he would ride with a different cornerback for a majority of the next game, depending on game situations. So Benjamin St. Juste, Dante Jackson, Cam Hart, Tarheeb Still, and Elijah Molden all having over 400 defensive snaps each last year. So again, a significant number for all 4 of those guys, and I think we're going to see what Jesse Minter brings with his system to Baltimore and how he deploys his defensive backs.
Absolutely. All right, moving right along here to our final segment, Josh, or our final storyline, I should say. How does Ty Loop look coming off of his Week 18 nightmare in Pittsburgh? And, it's one of those things where the kicker is an easy player to follow along with throughout training camp, as you see exactly whether it's a success or not every time they're on the field, the number of kicks they make. And that is something that is going to be really paid close attention to. They have not brought in a kicker to compete with Loop for his job, but certainly Jesse Minter has left that potential open, or Eric DeCosta did, I believe, earlier this offseason. So it is certainly possible that they do that at some point in camp to bring in some kind of veteran there. But not just how accurate he is as a kicker, but how far his kicks is something that's going to bear worth watching here throughout training camp.
Yeah, and I'm at a 2, Matt, and I'm, at B, and I'll reveal your answer. You're at a 1 on our final chart meter here with Tyler Loop, and how does he respond to his devastating miss in Week 18. But low for me, and I'm low, and we'll hear your thoughts. But Tyler Loop, he had by all means a tremendous rookie season and a brutal ending, and the ending does not need to necessarily cancel out the other. And his productive work throughout the season, made 30 of 34 field goal attempts. That's about 88%, converted 44 of 46 extra points, and his 134 point set a Ravens rookie record. But ultimately, in the end, when they needed him most, he misses that 44-yard field goal as time expired, with Pittsburgh winning the AFC North title and grabbing that automatic playoff berth. Jesse Minter, he's backed Tyler Loop publicly, and I think in a way, with the Ravens not bringing in any outside external competition for Tyler Loop, just shows the confidence that they have in him. And certainly you want to see him be able to make or convert kicks from longer distances. You think of the best kickers in the league as it pertains to distance. Brandon Aubrey, it seems like 60 plus is just an automatic number for him. And Tyler Loop's 30 of 34, all of those misses coming from 50 plus. So, is he able to respond in a way, not just from the emotional turmoil that came from that Week 18 miss and the domino effect that had on the entire franchise, but also being able to make longer kicks. So I think he's going to be fine, and that's why I'm at a 2. You're at a 1, and I think the organization is probably pretty low too.
Yeah, I'd say the organization's at a 1. They haven't brought in anybody to compete with him. If they really thought this was a problem or something where they needed to get another look at somebody else, he would be here already. That's not to say that he comes out in the first 2 weeks of camp, struggles. There's kickers that they can pick up off the street, and maybe that's just something they know that is out there, and they're not pressing and want to make sure that Tyler Loop has all the confidence in the world going into camp. But they obviously used significant draft capital. Any draft capital used on a kicker is significant to draft him and get him in the organization. And certainly with the way that his season went, I think it was impressive by several ways to evaluate a kicker. It ends on a real sour note, but I still think that there's a lot of confidence in that building over what Tyler Loop can do from a kicking standpoint. So I have it at a 1 because I don't think that even if they bring in somebody in the middle of camp, it's not something that I would really be overreacting about with Loop, because he seems to really have, if anybody has the inside track to a job here, it's him at that kicker spot.
And we've discussed primarily his responsibilities at his job title, kicker, but again, he's also the man on the kickoffs, and there was no kicker in the league that was penalized more last season when it pertains to infractions occurring on kickoff. So all his kicks going out of bounds. I believe he had 8, and then the next closest kicker in the NFL had half of that. So that is another department that they have to clean up. I asked Chris Horton multiple times, their former special teams coordinator who went on to New York to join John Harbaugh with the Giants, why, or what was being addressed, and why is this number growing so high as last season went on. And Chris kind of took the fall for that, Chris Horton that is, and saying that we're experimenting different kicks. And I don't know if experimenting in real time in those games was the best time for that. Was he covering for Tyler Loop at the time? And we'll find out. But that's a department you really want to see them improve on, because opposing offenses in today's NFL, you cannot have them starting at the 40. That's just basically a gimme. And we just talked about how kickers like Brandon Aubrey are automatic from 60 plus yards. So move the marker once.
There's only one Brandon Aubrey.
Yeah, there you go. But you move the marker once, and you're in consideration of points. Yeah. So that's a department that you want to see Tyler Loop improve on, and ultimately he can build all the confidence in the world. We're going to see all his makes and misses. We're going to track them down, but the first real live game time spot late in the game, I think when that make goes through, that's when he's going to fully restore his confidence. And let's give him, maybe he'll get a game winner early on. Shoot, week 1 at Indianapolis, go ahead and get it out of the way. But again, my chirp meter as it pertains to close this one out is pretty low on Tyler Loop.
Absolutely. That's going to be a wrap for us here. About 50 minutes into this show. We're aiming for 45. I think 50 is pretty close enough here. Hope we were able to give y'all an expansive look at this team heading into camp. Obviously, as training camp goes on and storylines emerge, we will be all over it. We have a fun episode on Thursday. It'll be coming out of day one. Josh and Sam together. No, me. I'll be coming back from Detroit that night. And don't worry, we will be talking Orioles later on over the next week with the trade deadline coming up. But for the Ravens, we'll have both of these guys humping on together to talk about day one, what they saw out at Owings Mills. So definitely looking forward to listening to that for me, but hope you all are as well. Josh, before we get out here, any final words for the good people?
Yeah, go ahead and give us a follow, Sun Early Birds, on all platforms, and also follow us on X, in particular, myself, JCT Sports, Brian Wacker, our Ravens beat reporter, he's at Brian Wacker1, and Sam Cohn, our esteemed colleague and Early Birds co-host, he's at Sam D. Cohn. The three of us, we're going to have plenty of updates, and of course, we can't forget the OG, Mike Preston. The four of us, we might even have some reinforcements as well as training camp opens. There are going to be so many updates. Go ahead and follow us on all platforms, because we can't wait to bring it to you guys as Jesse Minter training camp unfolds here just in a few days. It's like Christmas morning. I said it wasn't, and it basically is. So we'll end on that note. Yeah, and write us a 5-star review while you're at it. We really appreciate those as well.
Awesome. He's Josh Tolentino. I'm Matt Weyrich. Thank you all so much for listening, and have a good one.